Okay, so now that we've learned all three of our forms for linear equations, as we can see here, we have the general form, we have slope-intercept form, and we have slope-point form. The slope-y-intercept form is used when we're given the slope and the y-intercept. The slope-point form is used when we're given the slope and any point that exists on the line. In many cases, either the point or the slope of the line has to be determined from the information given before the equation can actually be used. So now we're going to put this into practice using the combination of all three of those methods. So for example 1, it says, given the point P, which is at 3, 1, and Q, which is at -2, -6, determine the equation in general form of a line passing through the 2 points. Well, as soon as I look at this, I'm going to say I don't have the slope, and above and beyond that, I don't know the y-intercept. Because I do have 2 points, the first thing that I'm going to have to solve, which is usually the case, is I need to figure out what the slope is. So I'm going to say that the slope of these is going to be, if I had -1 on the top and 3 on the bottom, so I'm using the P points for the first part, and I'm subtracting those from the Q points, -6 and -2, and stacking the Q points on the second part, and I'm going to say that this is going to give me +5 over 3 minus -2 is also going to be +5 or 1. Now I know what my slope is, and it wants it in general form. Well, I still don't have the y-intercept, which means I can only put this in slope-point form. There's two possible equations that I could make using either this point or this point. It doesn't matter which of the 2 points you pick, and I'm going to show you why that is the case. So let's say that I'm using the P point first. I'm going to say that I have y minus y1, which is -1, is equal to my slope of 1, and then x minus x1, which is going to be 3. This is going to give me y plus 1, and when I multiply the 1 into both parts, I just have x minus 3. And because the x is positive, when I move everything towards the x, I'm going to say that I have x. I need to subtract y from both sides, so I'm going to say minus y. And I'm going to subtract 1 from both sides and say that I have -4 is equal to 0. There's my general form. Now, what if I picked point Q instead? Well, then I'm going to say that I have y minus y1, which is going to be -6, is equal to 1 bracket x minus x1, which is going to be -2. This is going to give me y plus 6 is equal to x plus 2 because of those double negatives. X is still positive, so I'm going to move the y over, and I'm going to move the 6 over. I'm going to say that x subtract y, and then when I subtract 6 from both sides, -4 is equal to 0. Doesn't matter which point I picked, I still get the same general form. If I was going to slope-intercept form, the same would be true. I'd get the same slope-intercept form in both cases. Okay, when it says determine the equation in general form of a line that passes through the point of 5 and 0 and is perpendicular to the line with the equation 3x minus 5y plus 17 is equal to 0. Well, once again, I don't know the slope. I'm going to find the slope from this equation, and then because it's perpendicular, I'm going to take the negative reciprocal of it. So I'm going to say if I have 3x minus 5y plus 17 is equal to 0, I need to get y by itself, so -5y. I'm going to subtract 3x from both sides and subtract 17 from both sides, and divide everything by -5. so that y is truly by itself. Y is equal to positive 3 over 5x plus 17 over 5. And because I'm using this to find the slope, the only part of this that really matters is my slope. Because the slope is perpendicular, the slope that I'm looking for is going to be the negative reciprocal of this. I want a slope of negative 5 over 3. The next thing is, it wants it to be in general form, and it passes through this point. Well, that point is the x-intercept, it's not the y-intercept, which means that I can't use slope y-intercept form, I need to use slope point form again. So I'm going to say that I have y minus y1 is going to be 0, is equal to negative 5 over 3 bracket x minus x1, which is 5. This is just going to simplify to y, and this side, when I multiply it out, is going to be negative 5 over 3 times x is negative 5 over 3x. Negative 5 over 3 times negative 5 is going to give me positive 25 over 3. Well, because I don't like fractions, I'm going to multiply both sides by 3. Which means I'm going to say that I have 3y is equal to negative 5x, because 3 times negative 5 is going to be negative 15, divided by 3 is just going to cancel out the denominator, and same thing here, plus 25. When I multiply something by 3 that I'm also dividing by 3, it's going to cancel out the denominator. Because I can see that in this case, x is negative, I'm going to wind up moving both these over to the left-hand side, and I'm going to say that 5x plus 3y minus 25 is equal to 0, and there's my general form. Okay, for the last example, it says, find the equation in general form again of a line that is perpendicular to this line and with the same x-intercept as this line. Well, let's do these things one at a time. So I'm going to start by dealing with the perpendicular to this line. And I'm going to state that for the perpendicular to that line, I'm trying to find the slope and take the negative reciprocal of it. So I'm going to start by isolating y and saying that negative 7y is equal to negative 5x plus 10, and divide everything by negative 7. Y is equal to positive 5 over 7x minus 10 over 7. Because it's saying that it needs to be perpendicular, the only part of this that matters is the slope. So the slope I want to use is going to be equal to negative 7 over 5, because I'm taking that perpendicular slope. Next, it wants the same x-intercept as this equation. Well, if I'm looking for the x-intercept is the value of x when y is equal to 0. So I'm going to state that x minus 2, y has to be equal to 0, minus 12 is equal to 0. Or x minus 12 is equal to 0. X is going to be equal to 12. And I have a point, if this is the x-intercept that it goes through, the point of 12 and 0. There's my second piece of information. Lastly, I want to put it into general form. Well, all I have so far is a slope and a point that it goes through, and that point is not the y-intercept. So I'm going to have to put it into slope point form again. And I'm going to say that if I have y minus 0 is equal to negative 7 over 5 bracket x minus 12. Then this is going to give me y is equal to negative 7 over 5 times the x, and negative 7 over 5 times negative 12 is going to be negative 7 times negative 12 is positive 84 all over 5. To get rid of the fraction, I'm going to multiply both sides by 5. And I'm going to say that 5y is equal to negative 7x plus 84. Because the x is negative and I want to make it positive, I'm going to move everything to the left-hand side. 7x plus 5y minus 84 is going to equal 0. And there's my general form.